So this show is on NBC. It's on Peacock as well. And so I'm just going to request for your next touchdown celebration, could you do a peacock? Like it's kind of like, and people might, and people might think it's an eagle too, or it's an eagle, but just like, and we'll know it's really for a peacock, and it'll just kind of be a shout out to us and all of our friends. It's kind of like something like, it'll look cooler when you do it.
I could do that for you, but I'm pretty sure, like you said, everyone probably think it's an eagle.
Yeah,
but I can do that
AJ.
for you.
We'll know the truth, and that'll be great. That everyone wins in that situation.
AJ, I'm so sorry you had to see whatever the hell that was. I'm not sure. That was not a peacock.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Happy Wednesday and welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Connor Rogers alongside the Peacock, Matthew Berry, and Lawrence Jackson. That was a great interview with
Thank
AJ
you.
Brown.
And by the way, that was a peacock. You knew exactly what I was doing it. Exactly.
Yes, I like
the way you did your arms, right? You kind of had to imagine that, all the other feathers was under there.
It was not the dirty bird.
Not the dirty bird. The dirty bird's the dirty bird like this here,
So the entire interview, the definitive A.J. Brown interview, if you missed it, it's available on demand on Peacock. You can also watch it on the NFL on NBC YouTube channel, and of course wherever you get your podcast. It's the Tuesday show, the waiver wire show of the Fantasy Football Happy Hour podcast from this week. But A.J. Brown was great.
It was awesome.
It was a really funny interview. He's a great sport, and highly recommend you check it out if you haven't seen it.
And I actually believe him. I think if he scores, he's going to do it.
I think
he's a man of his word.
dope.
And
That'd
if
be
you're
dope.
a betting man, A.J. Brown scoring
He's
has been pretty
10
nice this year.
Well, he's got 10 so far this season. They play the Bears this week. Everyone
Rack
scores
it
against
up.
the Bears.
Yep. Rack it up.
Yeah, give me an anytime A.J. Brown touchdown this week. No question.
All right, let's get into the Rotoworld headlines because there is plenty to go around in the NFL world right now, and we will start with Mike White. Mike White is ready to roll against the Lions. If you said this over summer, people might laugh at you, but Mike White projected to be obviously a potential big-time streaming option this week as we head into the fantasy playoffs, Barry.
Yeah, that was the only question. The only question is health, right? But you love the production so far, right? I mean, the guy's been throwing a ton. He's averaging over 40 pass attempts a game, over 300 passing yards per game. Whether it's in good situations where, they're at home up against Chicago or they're on the road and they're down against Minnesota, either way, you like the fact that they're throwing a ton. You see it there on your screen in terms of what he's done the last 3 weeks. Threw it 44 times against the Bills as well, and now they're home against the Lions. Detroit, no team in the NFL gives up more fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks, guys, than the Detroit Lions. They're allowing the third most passing yards per game over the last 4 weeks as well. He's my QB 11 this week. I mean, again, if there's no greater testament to how wacky this fantasy football season has been, it's the fact that Mike White is a legitimate top 12 option in the fantasy playoffs this year.
If you are having some quarterback troubles, fire up Mike White. And like you said, the Detroit Lions, just look at the game they were in last week versus the Vikings. The Vikings lit them up, albeit in a losing effort. Now, Mike White hasn't thrown a touchdown pass in a couple of games, but if anybody's worried about that, right, the Detroit Lions have given up 21 touchdown passes this season, which is the 8th worst in the league. And, right, this game over-under is 44.5. That is a high total for a Jets-Lions game in a game that's going to be 35 degrees. So I like this matchup for Mike White.
And to support that even further, the Lions' run defense has been better lately, which tells you the Jets might go into a throwing script, which Mike White, Garrett Wilson, we saw what Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson did last week. Barry, let's take a look at your top 10 quarterback rankings.
By the way, to your point, over the last month, the Lions, the 8th best run defense in the NFL, the 3rd worst pass defense in the NFL, as I just said.
The script is there.
Against, the script is there. I don't think the Lions have anyone in their secondary that can keep up with Garrett Wilson. Elijah Moore, we'll see if they get Corey Davis back as well. And so, suddenly Mike White. Here we go.
Let's
go.
Let's get it.
And let's see the rest of your quarterback rankings.
If you're looking for a quarterback, if you need, here are my rankings right here. Especially, by the way, if you lost Kyler Murray,
yes,
and Mike White is a very viable option in the fantasy playoffs here. I could see you look again. This is my top 10 rankings, but if you had Trevor Lawrence and he's playing the Cowboys, I could see you wanting to play Mike White over Trevor Lawrence. Geno Smith on a short week against the Niners. I could see again, this is where I have them, but I could see you starting Mike White over one of those guys. I wouldn't look at you weird if that happened as well. Again, and those ranks might change as we get through the week. I had to rank it as if there's still a chance that White doesn't go because of the rib injury, but as of a Wednesday, seems like all systems go for Mike White.
Yeah, Robert Saleh saying that he's going to get treatment during the early portion of practice, then he's going to throw during team drills. All indications are that he will be starting, hearing that from Saleh. Let's move over to the Green Bay Packers here. Aaron Jones has been dealing with injuries almost the entire season. Lately, it's been the shin, but he practices on Tuesday. Romeo Doubs is confident he'll play versus the Rams as well. Lawrence, breaking down the Packers' backfield, we've seen A.J. Dillon getting going late. Aaron Jones has been somebody to lean on all year. How do you break down this backfield?
Yeah, so, coming into the season, we all felt like both running backs were going to be like, we thought they could both be, we thought A.J. Dillon was an RB2, Aaron Jones as an RB1. Now it's more so like Aaron Jones as an RB2, and now Dillon has played himself back into a flex play with over 60 rushing yards in 3 of his last 4 games. So if you look at it like that, you can approach it that way. And look at all the injuries we deal with. Starting A.J. Dillon in a flex versus the Rams in the playoffs, you could definitely do a hell of a lot worse. And as far as Aaron Jones, you fired him up already.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had some nice production the last time we saw him. Obviously, the Packers on a bye, and so we saw A.J. Dillon last time in Week 13. He scored a touchdown. He's actually scored now in back-to-back weeks. But Aaron Jones left that game early due to injury. And so, I felt the increased workload on Dillon was because of the injury. Jones off the injury report. He's going to practice today. You see it there on your screen. Dillon, because the touchdowns, actually has more fantasy points. And again, remember, Jones left the last game early. Dillon's getting more rushes. Again, all that is due to the fact that Jones did not finish that last game. I have Jones as a top 12 play this week. A.J. Dillon comes in at running back 33 for me. So I think he's a touchdown-dependent flex in this one. If there's a positive, they're at home. Packers are at home, so they're playing in Lambeau. Rams traveling cross country, Monday night game, and they're a touchdown favorite. Right now, the Packers are a touchdown favorite, so second half, do they run the ball a little bit? I do think these days it's actually easier to pass against the Rams than it is to run against the Rams. They still have a pretty decent defensive line. And also just, I don't have a stat for this, guys, but Aaron Rodgers, it's looking like it's getting late early. This is a Monday night game. It's a primetime game at Lambeau. I think Aaron Rodgers wants to, we'll see if he can ball out, but I think he's going to want to.
He better watch out for comeback Baker, though.
I mean,
comeback
I'm just saying,
Baker.
Right. Suddenly it's a shootout on Monday night. But my point is that they get in close, and normally you'd be like, all right, they're going to give it to Dillon, and he bangs it home. I could see Aaron saying, like, no, I'm checking out of that. I'm gonna bootleg, and I'm gonna try to get myself a cheap touchdown pass here, something like that, or run it in myself. So I don't know. I'm nervous about Dillon. You're more optimistic than I am, Lawrence. To me, Dillon is again a risky touchdown-dependent flex who's just outside my top 30. Aaron Jones, though, is still a must-start.
So what about Romeo Doubs, who's now returning? I know it's kind of hard to trust. He got a lot of targets when he was healthy. He's been out for a while. Now it's the fantasy playoffs, so I feel like the risk is a little different here.
We haven't seen him since week 9. And in that time, Christian Watson has become a thing with
exploded.
A capital T. And so, just again, it's the fantasy playoffs. It is win or go home. And so I don't want to get cute at all. We have no teams on a bye. You've got every single person. So I think you'd have to be pretty desperate and in a pretty deep league to trust Romeo Doubs. I don't mind you picking him up and stashing him and seeing what happens when he's back with Christian Watson off of the bye. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game and get him back. But for me, I feel like Aaron Jones and Christian Watson are literally the only 2 Packers I feel good about starting in this game. And that includes Aaron Rodgers, Lawrence.
Yeah, so look, again, how the tides have turned. Earlier it was Christian Watson when he got drafted, got hurt. Dobbs make a couple of plays, he gets hurt. You ain't getting the spotlight back from Christian Watson. This is the thing about it, right? Like you said, Matthew, we have not seen this man playing around. See, we don't know what his role is now. And I'll be real, it's dudes like Ben Skowronek that I would start before Rome. If I was in a situation like that, I would start Ben Skowronek, Tutu Atwell, all of them
Trent
dudes.
Irwin? We always brought him on the show.
I would start some of them Rams receivers, you know what I'm saying, before Dobbs, because we don't know what his role is now.
That's a great point, Lawrence. In the playoffs, we are trying to, more than anything else, narrow down and listen. fantasy football has a bunch of fluky stuff that happens, and so anything that is unknown, we try to get rid of. And there's always going to be unknown. And to Lawrence's point, we have no idea. Is he behind? Is he behind Randall Cobb in terms of snaps? We don't know how. The only thing we know is that Christian Watson is going to get his, and so I don't want to. We at least have some sense that there's at least somewhat of a connection between Skowronek and Baker Mayfield,
Exactly.
or Tutu Atwell, who got almost double-digit targets last week. So I'm with Lawrence here. I don't mind picking up Dobbs, but I have no interest in him on Monday night. I want to see it first.
Yeah.
Staying in the NFC, Desmond Ridder, the Falcons' third-round pick, will make his first career start about the Saints. And obviously, guys, this, from a fantasy perspective, is not about Ridder, but what he can do for the pass catchers in this offense that were clearly limited by Marcus Mariota all year. Lawrence, do you expect any kind of bump, especially for somebody like Drake London?
First off, it's about damn time they put Ridder in.
It took way too long.
Secondly, I don't know if this is going to affect him in a positive way. Like, Drake London is going to have to get his opportunities and make the most of them, because you got to do a new quarterback, but you still got the same coach in the same system doing the same damn things, and he going to run that ball if it kill him.
Right.
So I didn't think like, oh, Drake London about to go off. No, like, bring me back Matt Ryan, then I think something in. But until then,
a diehard Falcons fan right here.
I'm good.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm good.
Yeah, about damn time. By the way, that's what Lizzo is actually singing about. Is Desmond Ridder starting. That's I swear to God. Like if you listen to the lyrics closely, it's really
it's
a
go back
lot.
and check.
Check it out. That's
Yeah.
Lizzo is literally singing about Desmond Ridder. It's super weird and specific, but that's what she's singing about. Love me some Lizzo. I'll just say this: I'm with Lawrence here. No, thank you. Again, just what we talked about with the Romeo Dobbs. Like, hey, I want to narrow. I want to get rid of as much randomness and unknown things in the playoffs as I can. We have no idea what Desmond Ridder is going to look like. We expect it to be a very run-heavy offense. I want no part of Drake London. Could you talk yourself into Cordero Patterson? Sure. As another touchdown-dependent flex. Like, again, he's in that A.J. Dillon route. Like if he scores, he pays off for you, but you don't feel great about his usage so far, especially against the Saints. Saints have a pretty good defense.
Yeah, that's a big factor,
that's
too.
the thing. They're on the road at New Orleans. This should be a tough matchup here. I mean, the over/under is 43, so we don't expect a ton of fireworks in this game. Should be a slow-paced game.
Andy Dalton's still playing.
Desmond Ridder versus Andy Dalton.
I think the Falcons just got to see if they got to draft a quarterback in 2023. That's what they're going to use.
No, and it's a super smart thing. Like, give the kid some run. But and I'll even say this. Again, you're in a deeper league, you're in a 2-quarterback league, a super flex league, and you just like Kyler Murray. I'm in that situation.
For sure.
And I prefer, like, I put in bids on Colt McCoy. Like, I prefer Colt McCoy. I prefer Baker Mayfield. I prefer Sam Darnold. Like, I prefer any of those.
Definitely Darnold.
Right, any of those guys over Desmond Ridder this week in his first start against the Saints.
It feels like a script that Arthur Smith will take the ball out of his hands, especially on the road, a tough matchup against the Saints, like you said. All right, more odd quarterback situations. This is not one you're chasing on the waiver wire in any sense. The Texans are maintaining a 2-quarterback system against the Chiefs. Fellas, people laugh at this when you hear about it in college. When it makes it to the NFL level against the Chiefs, this was Lovie Smith's quote, "I thought it was effective. 2 different flavors, and that's always tough for a defense to prepare with what we were doing with them."
Yeah. It was vanilla and vanilla bean. Like, those are the flavors.
Tomato, tomato.
Right,
What are you
like
talking
vanilla,
about?
French
right?
vanilla, maybe. You know what I mean? Like, I just, But yeah, here's the only reason it's interesting. There's only one reason why it's interesting. And that is that on Yahoo, Jeff Driscoll actually qualifies at tight end. So you can play him at quarterback or tight end. We're back to Taysom Hill and that controversy. Now, it's only on Yahoo. He qualifies only as a quarterback, I believe, elsewhere. But on Yahoo, he does qualify as a tight end. And there's a guy who had 7 runs for 36 yards against the Cowboys. And so, they're playing Kansas City. The Chiefs are a bottom 12 run defense over the last month. And so, in a situation where you're desperate for a tight end in a Yahoo league, could you talk yourself into Jeff Driscoll
in the playoffs?
as a poor man's Taysom Hill? I guess. Like, I would rank him as a high-end tight end too.
I'm trying to figure out where this tight end stuff came from. Like, He ain't play no tight end in
No,
college.
I-
They just making up stuff out
Right.
here in the whole two
I got to
quarterbacks.
send a note to Yahoo. I don't know what's
Yeah,
going on.
something
over
like
there.
he didn't like they
it
trying to
seems like a
say
big
he
miss.
fixed. That's what they trying to say. They
Right.
trying to say
And he's
junk.
not, though.
They trying to say he got junk in the trunk or something. Because they
With
just
Taysom
make
Hill, it sort of makes sense because he's always been
He-
kind of this Swiss Army
exactly.
knife player.
Yep.
Jeff Driscoll's a quarterback.
He's a quarterback.
He was a quarterback in college.
is
He's been a
little
quarterback
league
in the
stuff.
pros throughout his career.
Yeah.
Like he's been a backup. Like he had some run with the Lions. I mean, he's been around a lot. You know, but
Was
like
evaluated as a quarterback.
right.
Just because you're athletic doesn't mean you're just a tight end.
No.
Let me
That's
scale
what I
back
tell my
here.
coaches. They're constantly like, "Oh, we're Barry. We're playing you a tight end." I'm like, I get it.
I'm athletic,
I get it.
but I
I'm
can still
athletic.
throw.
I can still throw. Do you understand the cannon I got here?
Yes.
No, and right. So
You
I got
don't
to
just
talk
get the
him into
bald
it.
rifle nickname for
No,
nothing.
no, exactly. The ball.
This is
popped
what
out.
you did in Little League, though.
Right.
Just run two quarterbacks and I think Lovie Smith just like, man, the hell with it. Let's see what works.
Yeah, and let's get this season over with. If we're
No,
the Texans.
Lovie Smith is like we're tanking for Bryce or whatever. I don't know. They're like figuring it out. Rich, whatever. So that's the only reason I bring it up. It's worth noting. Like, see what your tight end options are if you play on Yahoo. It would be dicey. It is a risky start. But again, like if you're just like, hey man, I'm sifting through a bunch of junk.
Somebody gonna do it. Somebody gonna do it.
Somebody will do it.
They gonna get them 6 points.
Hey, as long as we're talking tight ends, just very quickly, just worth noting, Dallas Goedert got activated off the IR, so the Eagles now have 21 days to activate him.
That's
We'll
big.
see if he plays this weekend or not, but it's worth noting he's only rostered in 86% of Yahoo leagues, so he's probably taken. But it's worth seeing if somebody in your league waived him thinking he wasn't coming back, and just check. You never know. Every once in a while, somebody does something dumb in your league. So just want to bring that up as well. And and if you've been stashing Dallas Goedert, there's a chance you get him back on Sunday, but certainly sooner rather than later.
All right. I wanted to ask, and I think it's so insane, with Dameon Pierce's injury, can you buy into Driscoll running at all? But it just seems so insane to start him in a playoff game, not as a roster stash right now.
The only way you're starting him is in a deep league at tight end, and you're truly desperate.
Who would you start, Desmond Ridder or Jeff Driscoll? At tight end. Desmond Ridder at quarterback or Jeff Driscoll at tight end.
I guess I would start Desmond Ridder just because he'll play all the snaps.
Yeah.
You're guaranteed that.
But I mean, like it's ugly town.
It is ugly town.
It is.
I mean, if they just gonna do that, can we get Yahoo to make Justin Fields a tight end too?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Can we get that?
Dear, at
Don't
Yahoo
encourage
Fantasy.
them. Don't
Just
encourage
tweet 'em-
them.
Just tweet them at Yahoo Fantasy. Go ahead.
All right, we're gonna take our first
We
break.
just report it. We don't make up the rules, man. We just report them.
When we're back, it's a little keep it open or close it out.
Let's
Be
go.
right back.
Let's go. I thought you were going to show up in a Desmond Ridder jersey, dude.
Yeah, right.
Not hitching his wagon to that.
This is what the National Football League is about. It's about giving your all, and when it doesn't work out, getting better from it, not worse. So we have to find a way to do that. I was hoping that would be the case this past game. It wasn't. So does that? I don't think that. I see it as an opportunity.
That was Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel staying optimistic. The question is, will these guys stay optimistic as we jump into keep it open, close it out? Basically, are you sticking with these players in your lineup for the first round of the fantasy
By the way, Mike
playoffs?
McDaniel, I'm not the only. He's not the only one. I also hoped that it would get better, that they would have learned from the week before.
Well,
'Cause
you-
what?
I heard you went on TV
I
and-
went on. 14 million people saw me say I think they're going to kill him. I think Tua has a huge game. Those are the kind of things I said
You
in
weren't
front of
alone.
14 million people. And
Wasn't
you know
just
what?
you. Didn't the
I
whole
was
panel-
wrong.
the whole
I
panel
was
pick the
wrong.
Dolphins?
Everett, we all picked them. And if I'd known, we don't talk about our picks beforehand, and I'm annoyed. I feel like somebody should have jumped on the grenade, but
Kiss of death.
and no one did. And I just if I'd known everyone was going Dolphins, I'd have gone Chargers because that is the kiss of death. When we all go one team, look, I still have the lead. So I guess it would have.
I did see that,
right? But
people forget that.
People do forget that. No, they just bring up the fact that I
Yes.
was
This is
I
what
took,
you
I
do.
took the over on Tua passing yards. I was 0 for everything.
Pick the Dolphins this
I
week.
picked- Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's
No,
not
they're
the
playing
game.
Buffalo.
Yeah, right.
in
play
a blizzard.
No, and now, listen, I got a real decision to make. We'll get into keep it open, close that out here in a second. But it's the Commanders-Giants game. My
Yes.
heart says the
Yeah,
Commanders.
yeah.
But then my brain says, you've seen this movie way too many times. Every time you count on the Commanders,
They will let you down.
They let you down. And this one's a true pickup. So I don't know what I'm going to do. Part of me wants to pick the Commanders because they're my team and they are favored and they're home. And I do think they're the better defense. But on the other hand, I'm sort of like, I should pick the Giants because either I get the Giants right and I'm happy about that, or the Commanders win and then I'm thrilled and it doesn't matter because they're going to control their playoff destiny. I don't know. I'll think about it 8 billion times between now and Sunday night.
Commanders, Jets, Falcons. That's why this is a drinking show. That's why this is the happy hour.
Exactly.
The desk of sadness for
That's
the happy
sadness.
hour.
By the way, speaking of Falcons, officially Marcus Mariota to the IR.
Yep.
So there you go.
The Desmond Ridder show to finish out the season.
It's been real, my boy.
Yeah. Who's his backup?
Logan
Who's Desmond
Woodside.
Ridder's-
Logan
what?
Woodside.
Logan Woodside.
Yep, just
Right.
signed.
Right, there you go. AF superstar, Logan Woodside?
I believe
I
so.
believe so.
Yes.
XFL?
Toledo, yeah.
Oh, Toledo, yeah.
Toledo,
Exactly.
yes.
Pride of Toledo.
That's right. All right, let's get into Keep It Open or Close It Out, and let's start with Barry's favorite player, Tua Tagovailoa, traveling to Buffalo. Last week, 10 for 28, 145 yards, touchdown, 28 rushing yards.
Ooh.
By the way,
This is a tough one.
If you had told me, if you'd said, guess how many completions he had in that game, I'd have taken under 10. I'm amazed he had 10. He looked
It
awful.
felt that way.
He
Yes.
looked awful. They should put him at tight end. How about that?
We won't get no stats on that.
No.
We won't get no numbers.
Okay, so what's your question here?
Can you start Tua in the fantasy playoffs? Which sounds crazy to ask that, but the matchup, the weather, how he's looked for the last 2 weeks. It's a lot to weigh here.
It is. I hedged. I'll be honest with you. I hedged. He's my QB 7. No, he's my QB 7. Right. Here's the positives. I'll give you the positive side of Tua, which is that he's got Tyreek Hill, he's got Jalen Waddle. The odds are they're not going to. It's a very important matchup. It's a divisional matchup. The Bills have shown some signs of weakness, if you will.
Yes.
Right. Last 4 weeks, Buffalo's given up over 40 pass attempts a game. They're a bottom 10 pass defense over the last month. Mike White on half a rib, almost threw for 300 yards against him.
Similar passing concept,
Right.
McDaniel and LaFleur.
Correct. So those are all the positives here. But to your point, he's had 4 games against the Bills and he struggles. He's averaging 10 fantasy points per game against the Bills in his career. Now, obviously, he didn't have Tyreek Hill or Mike McDaniel. He had Jalen Waddle, but he didn't have Tyreek or Mike McDaniel in these games. Buffalo overall this season has been good against quarterbacks, 6th fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Game is going to be in cold weather. Tua's looked brutal the last 2 games, under a 55% completion percentage here. So I'm as a low-end QB1. He is definitely risky. I'm probably keeping it open, but like I said, I don't think he's a no-brainer start. I don't think he is I've been riding Tua the whole time. It depends on what other options you have. I'm probably not benching him for a so-so guy with a good matchup.
Right.
Right? But I do think if you had another viable option, I think that's something to consider.
What about you, Lawrence?
If he lays an egg, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
That's my point. Especially, by the way, Tyreek Hill might not be 100%.
Right. So I respect everything you just said. I feel very similar. Obviously, he's my guy here. Hasn't been successful against the Bills. The interesting thing about this is the one time they played the Bills earlier this year. Now, it was a different game. It was in Miami. It was warm, all this, that, and the third. But the Dolphins won that game. Tua was actually pretty good against the Bills the first time around. The thing is, the Bills had 90 offensive plays to the Dolphins 39.
Right.
So in those 39 plays, Tua went 13 to 18 for 186 and a touchdown. Now, I'm going to keep it open, but it's because I have faith in Mike McDaniels to adjust and for the offense to take what the defense gives them, because it was there versus the Chargers. They was forcing it. Tua was forcing the issue. So I'm going to trust them to adjust. Don't know if they'll win the game, but fantasy-wise, like you said, I'm not going to stress myself benching him over some quarterbacks, but it's not like Tua's a must-start, but we must keep it open.
So
That's fair. I'll just say this. The only thing I'll say is if for some reason Tyreek Hill isn't going to play, and the expectation is that he does.
That changes it.
Right, but if Tyreek Hill is out, then I'm out on Tua.
Let me
Just
throw one more
clear.
thing at you, because we're going to do Jalen Waddle next, so these are tied together. You wake up Saturday morning or Friday, and the weather's just an absolute mess. Does that play into this even more? Because the conditions are expected to be bad, and Tua doesn't really strike you as this Josh Allen all-weather kind of quarterback.
Yeah. I think if it,
Yet another
I think
factor.
yes. I think if it was bad weather, if it's kind of
like
blizzard-like
worse than what we think it's
Heavy
going to
snow.
be.
like blizzard-like
Yeah.
conditions, I'm probably benching Tua.
Okay.
In that scenario, yes.
All right.
Some quarterbacks can, right? With strong
Sure.
arm guys or guys that are mobile quarterbacks that could run around. Like Josh Allen will be fine regardless
Yeah.
of the weather. But yeah, Tua's not that guy.
So let's talk about Jalen Waddle then. Waddle, obviously, let's assume Tyreek Hill plays to make
Yeah.
this conversation a little bit more straightforward. Lawrence, with Waddle, last 2 games, 9 targets, 3 catches, 40 yards. Just not much. As Tua falters, Waddle falters. So if you don't have confidence in Tua, as we've talked about, does that carry over to Waddle?
You got a great point. You make a great point, and it's the same thing. I feel the exact same way. It's like, yeah, I'm going to keep this open because it's Waddle. The past 2 games have not looked great. 40 receiving yards total again. But like you said, Tua's fallen down the past 2 games, as has Waddle. He hasn't had a 100-yard game since week 8. And I don't know if we suspect that this game, but we could at least hope for some more volume. Again, the Dolphins have to take what's underneath, take what the defense gives you, and that's why I still have a little faith in Waddle. Keep it open.
Right. Over the last month, the Bills are a top 5 run defense. They've been really good against the run. And so when you think about the fact that the Dolphins are over a touchdown underdog in this game, my expectation is they're going to have to throw. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively. Jeff Wilson Jr. might miss this game. Obviously, he left last week with the injury. So my expectation here is that they have to throw, that they're going to be down, they're going to be throwing, and when they're throwing to Tyreek and they're throwing to Jalen Waddle. I'm at wide receiver 20, which is the lowest I've had him all year long.
Right.
So he's a low-end wide receiver 2 for me, but I'm still starting Jalen Waddle. I just think when you get to the playoffs, even though there's been a little bit of disappointing performance from him the last 2 weeks, I'm still keeping it open on Jalen Waddle because of his talent, because of the volume I'm expecting, and because he's one of those guys that all he needs is one play. Like, he can make your day in one play.
Yes.
He's got that ability.
Let's stay with the wide receivers here and look at Mike Evans against a tough Bengals defense. Bengals are one of the hottest teams in football right now on both sides of the ball. Mike Evans, kind of an anomaly right now in terms of what we're so used to from him is consistency, and that has not been the case, Barry.
You see it right there on your screen. He's got 1 game in the last 5 with double-digit fantasy points. That was Week 10 against the Seahawks, and he had 10.4. You know what I mean? Like, just 5 for 54. Mike Evans has been under 60 yards, as you see it there on your screen, in 5 straight games. He's averaging under 8 fantasy points per game in his last 3. Last week, he had 1 end zone target. That was his first since Week 9. He hasn't been a top 30 wide receiver since Week 8. Like, I'm at wide receiver 30. I'm wide receiver 25 this week. You feel like positive touchdown regression is coming, but yeah, I'm probably closing it out on Mike Evans if I have, because the truth of the matter is he's been so bad for so long. If you've made the playoffs, you've made it despite Mike Evans, not because of him.
Right.
You have found other options, whether it's Garrett Wilson or somebody else. You have found somebody else to take that wide receiver spot, and I would roll with whoever it is that got you to the playoffs rather than Mike Evans, because it's not just Mike Evans, guys. Brady's looked bad.
Yeah.
Brady's looked bad.
Line's terrible.
That offensive line has looked awful. The Bengals, we know, can get after it. And so, I don't know, guys. I would – look, the narrative changes on Evans if that long touchdown doesn't get called back because of the holding penalty. So they were looking at him, and it's not working. So maybe they go back and be like, hey, we got to figure out a way to move Evans around and free him up and get him the ball. But he's a risk-reward wide receiver 3 for me. And so given the premise of the segment, keep it open and close it out. I'm more likely than not closing it out on Evans.
Every week I come on this show and we talk about Mike Evans in this segment, and we say, we're going to leave it open. Well, how many weeks can we continue to do that? We're going to go 3 for 3 here because I'm calling the bartender right there. Hey, man, close out my tab on Mike Evans. I don't want nothing to do with that this week, right? Since week 4,
close it out.
Close that thing out. Big tipping right here, too. Since week 4, the Bengals have led up a quarterback throwing for over 300 yards. They just held Patrick Mahomes to under 230 a couple of weeks ago. What you think they're going to do to Brady and them? Like, they've been looking bad, So, and Mike Evans is part of that. They mixing in Julio a little bit here and there. Russell Gage has come back. The only consistent target out there for them is Chris Godwin. So, close that tab up, baby.
Yeah, I mean, they're a top 10 scoring defense over the last month, the Bengals are. They're favored in this game. The game's in Tampa Bay, and they're still favored by 3.5. So they're basically saying they think the Bengals are at least 5 points better than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. By the way, you ever notice, like, when you're at a restaurant and you're ready to close it out, or you want the check, or you're at a bar, you do this? You know, you sort of like, you know, you're over the waiter's over there, and you're just like, you know, and like they know to bring you your check, which is weird because you never actually write checks anymore. You know what I mean? Like you throw down your card or whatever, you throw down some cash, but it's not like you don't wave over a waiter being like, you know, like.
I always think it's signing it.
Is that? But
that's what I think.
The check when you
but
get
you're
a
right.
credit card.
It's just an old.
It's an old person thing. I mean, do you guys do that? Like, I'm an old man, so I'll do that because I'm an old.
Yeah, and I was a waiter, so I used to like that. That's how it's loud in a restaurant.
Right.
So if somebody didn't do that, I'd be like, I don't know what you
Yeah,
want
I
from
do
me.
that.
You need another drink. You need more food.
Yeah, you just
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Where were you a waiter?
At a Red Lobster.
At a Red Lobster.
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, it's the worst job I've ever had.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
hook us up with them biscuits.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've had some weird
Hook
jobs.
us
Hook us up with them biscuits,
How
boy.
many times did people like, I need more biscuits?
People would ask for like bags to go home, and I didn't care. I'd give them the bags every
Right,
time. 'Cause
exactly.
You want a good tip. And I was in
Yeah.
college. You're working for every last dollar.
Oh, yeah.
Every last dollar.
Yeah, exactly.
You know how long it would take to scrub out the smell of endless shrimp?
I bet.
45-minute showers.
Oh my God.
Awful. I'm
yeah.
very happy to be here. Okay, that's why I have a
You guys are
smile
so
on my
good.
face every time I'm on this show.
Right. Hey, just a note for our producer, Brian Rubin. Next week when Connor's here, I want a whole big bucket of peel and eat shrimp. I'm going to
man.
make him peel it during the show.
I'd
to
have
bring you back.
nightmares that night. Waiter nightmares. That's
Oh
a
my
real
God.
thing.
I can't. That's amazing.
Yep, so
It's fantastic.
the-
And listen. I was a paper boy. We all have jobs where we started out. I was a paper back. This is how old I am. Back when you actually had newspapers, and
you
people
throw
would get delivered.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like
Yeah.
I rode my. This was when I was a kid in like high school. I would ride my bike, and it was one of my high school jobs. I ride my bike, and I literally had the bag, and I throw papers.
Yeah.
It's terrible. And if it missed, I'd be like, I kept driving. You know?
Yeah, tough luck. They can go
Yeah,
find
exactly.
it.
It'll be all right.
All right, back to the wide receivers here. Another guy trending the wrong way, Hollywood Brown. Tough matchup against Denver. His quarterback is now out for the season with a torn ACL, and the last two games for Hollywood Brown have not been pretty. Targets have been great, 16 targets, but only 10 catches for 80 yards. Colt McCoy will be starting on the road against the Broncos' pass defense. Any confidence in Hollywood Brown, or is this one closed for sure?
I'm probably closing it out again. I'm at wide receiver 31, so it sort of depends on the size of your league. If I'm in a 12-team league, 3 wide receiver league, I think you can consider it. He's similar to Jalen Waddle in that he's one of those guys that all he needs is one. But and I changed my tune, by the way, if Rondell Moore is out once again. But my expectation here is that Rondell Moore actually is going to get a lot of love in this game. I mean, it's worth noting. Since week 10, the Broncos allowed the third most receiving yards per game to the slot. And so Rondell Moore is going to make the others receiving votes. Again, if he comes back, we haven't really gotten an update yet. The Cardinals haven't practiced yet this week on Rondell Moore. But so I think DeAndre Hopkins, you're still starting him, obviously, because of the volume there. But we just haven't seen it consistently yet from Hollywood Brown. And given the matchup and Colt McCoy, who doesn't have the arm strength of a Kyler Murray, he's wide receiver 31. I'm probably closing it out here on Hollywood Brown, unless I'm in a deeper league.
Look, check it. Look, we got Colt McCoy in the game now, right?
Against possibly Brett Rippon.
There you go.
Yeah.
What a matchup.
What a matchup.
And still, at Denver, where the over-under is 36.5. So how many players from a Cardinals offense in a game that's 36.5, how many Cardinals players we going to start with Colt McCoy at quarterback? Hopkins, like you said, we got to do that. You don't
Denver's
give him,
favored in this game, by the way.
bingo. Look,
believe it.
you don't give DeAndre Hopkins targets. He going to fight you. You got to start James Conner because the volume is going to be there. So it's just like, nah, man, I'm good on Marquise Brown this week. And like you said, he got 8 targets last week, but it didn't really amount to much. So I'm going to close it out on Hollywood.
And I think you could argue that the Broncos are a better defense than the Patriots. And again, this is a game in Denver. Colt McCoy's fine. I think he'll be fine. Like I said, I might change my tune a little bit if Rondell Moore is out, just because I think it'll be a narrow target tree. But yeah, this is a low-scoring, ugly game.
Moving over to the running backs, Nick Chubb coming off a tough week against Cincinnati where not much was working on the ground for him, did not find the end zone. They now have Baltimore We've seen Baltimore obviously play in these grinded-out games, especially the 10-9 win over the Steelers. Nick Chubb, somebody that people usually leave in the lineup and forget, Barry. Is that the case for the playoffs?
I think you're keeping it open on Nick Chubb. I get it. Like, Ravens are the number one run defense over the last month, and he has been bad, especially since Deshaun Watson came into the game, into the league as a quarterback, as a starting quarterback, I should say. You see it there on your screen, and what Nick Chubb has done with Deshaun Watson starting. He's averaging 8.4 fantasy points per game, and 8.2, because, you know.
Math.
Right, there you go. Hashtag math. I was told there'd be no math. He's averaging under 60 rushing yards per game. Now, again, they were at the Texans, they were at the Bengals. The Texans one is the one that makes you nervous, though. But he was so bad. Watson at least looked like an NFL quarterback last week. He's getting better. The expectation is he'll be a little bit better as well against Baltimore. I just don't know how you bench Nick Chubb. Like, who else do you have? He's my running back 15. So that's the lowest I've had Nick Chubb all season. He's now a running back 2. He's a mid-tier running back 2, whereas he's normally locked in as a low-end RB1. But if they get in close, you'd expect him to get a touchdown. I'm going to keep it open on Nick Chubb. I get the question, but I'm keeping it open.
This is like when we talked about George Kittle last week. Like, it's George Kittle, bruh. You know, even though he didn't go on to have a decent game, it's still George Kittle. This is still Nick Chubb here. And again, I'll go back to the over-under again. This game, 37.5. The Ravens are going to do the exact same thing as what the Browns are trying to do, and that's run the ball. We still don't even know who the quarterback's going to be on the Ravens side. It could be rookie Anthony Brown making his first start. So that'll keep the Browns in a situation to where they want to run the ball. You mentioned Deshaun Watson. He improved from his first start of the season, but he's not quite there yet. So they're going to keep trying to ride Nick Chubb. Got to leave it open because you know Nick Chubb at any point, he could break one of them long ones.
A little bit more of a difficult one here, guys. Travis Etienne takes on the Cowboys. Etienne has not been the pass-catching threat that I think we all hoped for when they used their first-round pick on him.
You want to hear a crazy stat?
Please.
Travis Etienne has a lower target share than Derrick Henry this year. Think about that.
Does not make sense.
Think about that. I mean, they're not using him in the passing game the way we would have hoped this year. Having said that, they are using him a lot. Over the last 2 games, he's gotten 80% of the running back snaps. He's had at least 16 touches in the last 2 games. I get it. It's a tough matchup with Dallas. He hasn't been great. I have him as a borderline top 20 play. He comes in at running back 19 in my initial ranks this week. I'm reluctantly keeping it open just because I don't know that you have 2 other running backs that are guaranteed to get anywhere from 16 to 20 touches in a game. I get that it's a tough matchup with Dallas, and he hasn't been great recently, but he's another one that just all he needs is one play.
Yep.
So I'm reluctantly keeping it open on Travis Etienne.
Look, the good thing is he's not, well, we don't expect him to be running back 47 again, which is what he was in week 14, right? The Cowboys, the most recent 2 running backs that they faced, Jonathan Taylor and Dameon Pierce, had moderate success against them. Not crazy, like 82 and 78 rushing yards respectively, so nothing crazy. If Etienne could hover in that range, though it's going to be hard to feel like he could get the 20 carries to do it. He'll have to do it through the receiving game, which you just mentioned. He hasn't been getting that, but like I say, the last 2 backs the Cowboys face have had okay success. He's in 80% of the running back snaps over the last 2 games. Can't leave him on the bench.
47.5 over under 2. So Vegas, BetMGM does expect points in this game.
Leave it open.
Last one, and this is another conversation really about usage. DeAndre Swift traveling to take on the Jets. One note for me here, guys, before we get into this one, Quinnen Williams is not practicing today. That could have a big impact on if you are keeping it open or closing it out with Swift. Barry, the big thing for me, he was out-carried by Jamal Williams last week. This has been a roller coaster with Swift all year. What are you doing? What are you doing here?
One game. There's one game that DeAndre Swift has played this year where he's had more than 5 receptions. He's been under 5 in every other game. He's had single-digit touches in 5 of the past 6 games. And you mentioned the matchup with the Jets, who have allowed 1 receiving touchdown to a running back all season. That's tied for second best in the NFL. Assuming Williams plays, and again, he missed practice today, so that would change my tune a little bit. But assuming Williams gets back by the end of the week, I'm keeping Quinnen Williams, not Jamal.
Sure.
assuming Quentin Williams plays, then yeah, I'm closing it out on DeAndre Swift. Just it's too scary for me. His usage is too scary and too up and down in a tough matchup on the road at the Jets.
I for a second I thought you was gonna go the other way, but for the first time I think we gonna go 100% on this one. I'm closing it too. We talked about these two running backs last week, and DeAndre Swift made me look foolish. Right after that 18-touch game where he went for over 100 and 110 total yards and a touchdown, I'm like, he's back.
Yeah, sure.
He's not back.
No.
9 touches, 39 yards. And what's interesting, too, was...
in a game in which the Lions moved the ball, were leading for much of the game.
Yes.
They were throwing.
One
The
handily.
script was in his favor.
Script was in his favor. And they were throwing a ton. And he's their pass-catching running back.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Justin Jackson's getting run.
And this was in a game where Jamal Williams didn't even score a rushing touchdown.
Right.
So, like, come on, man. That's just too scary, especially against the Jets defense. Close it up, baby. We going home.
The only thing that I'll note about that game, that I think is worth noting, is they had a couple of long touchdown passes. You know, they had the long one to Jamison Williams. They had the they had the long one to DJ Shark as well. And so, I don't expect that to be the case against the Jets. The Jets defend the deep ball really well, and so they're going to have to change the script somewhat on the road at New York. And so I could see them going more run heavy, especially in cold weather on the road at the Jets. But yeah, I don't know how you could trust DeAndre Swift in this game. If Quentin Williams is out, then he becomes a viable high-end flex, But at the moment, yeah, I'm closing it out. If it makes you feel better, though, about your bad call on Swift last week, Lawrence, at least you weren't in front of 14 million people saying you believe in Tua last Sunday night, right?
That's the silver lining right there.
That's
when you were saying that earlier, I was like, damn, I do not want to be known like him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got trolled on Twitter, and rightfully so. Rightfully so.
Meanwhile, I'm the dude always talking about Tua. Nobody give me anything.
No,
I'm good with that.
You were
Keep a low profile. We're going to break. When we're back, it's What's on Tap, our Week 15 backfield breakdown.
I demand some.
So the way my mom explained it was like the play plan that you sit babies in. So basically I was in that beating on all the toys, and my uncle kind of like walked by and was like, damn, all you hear is bam, bam, bam. So that was a family nickname, and when I started playing rec ball, I guess it was easier to pronounce than Zonovan, so people just started calling me Bam, and like I put it on my high school highlights on the huddle. I put Zonovan Bam Knight, and it pretty much stuck.
That was Jets running back Bam Knight. Clearly an agent of chaos since he was a baby in the crib, how he got the nickname. And that leads us, fellas, to What's on Tap. Essentially, we're looking, are you starting both running backs in their backfields? You could start one, or you could fade both of them. And we'll start right there with the Jets. Bam Knight, Michael Carter taking on the Lions. As Barry pointed out earlier, Lions' run defense has been a lot better recently, while their pass defense has struggled. And Bam Knight has kind of taken the reins in this backfield. After Breece Hall got hurt, the Jets were scrambling. James Robinson, Michael Carter, Ty Johnson. It is now Bam Knight's backfield.
Yeah, you know what I mean, and credit to you, Connor. For listening when I was saying, "Hey, Bam Knight's the real deal." I know you cover the Jets. I know you do their pre and post game show.
Hold on to your coattails.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I was, I said, like, watch out for this Bam Knight guy.
It was a smart move by me. Hang on to your coattails.
Yeah, exactly.
Though.
Listen, no, look, you called it really early. A great call by you, where you said, like, I'm not even worried. And you said this weeks ago. You said they think they found something in Bam Knight. I'm not worried about when Michael Carter comes back. They don't want Michael Carter to be anything other than like kind of a third down back, and a receiving back. Like they think Bam Knight can do it all. He's the guy that they feel like they finally found a Breece Hall replacement in Bam Knight. And so the volume has been there, right? 17 touches for 3 straight. Like he's had over 100 yards from scrimmage in 2 of the last 3. He's averaging over 15 fantasy points per game. And, oh, by the way, he gets Detroit this week. And so after last week, Michael Carter might have cost them the game with that fumble. Connor, like, all in on Bam Knight. Yes, I am starting Bam Knight. I am not starting Michael Carter, however. I don't know, like, he's now had single-digit touches in 3 straight games. He's had under 40 scrimmage yards in 3 straight. I get it. It's Detroit. But he's just outside my top 30. I'm starting Bam Knight with confidence this week. I am not starting Michael Carter this week.
Well, yeah, even though the Detroit Lions run defense is good and they've been better and all that good stuff, you're still going to put Bam Knight in there. The volume's just too good, and it's not just the volume. He's running the ball efficiently. I wouldn't start Michael Carter if this was the Houston Texans because he's just not the guy anymore. Robert Saleh has said it. It has shown he's that dude.
Yeah, right. He's like a Zach Wilson running back. He's like the running back version of Zach Wilson.
Yeah, put away.
They're moving on. They're moving on.
Which is wild.
Right. Although big news though, Zach Wilson has been promoted to second string.
Promoted to second string. No more scout team.
We back, baby. We back.
Joe Flacco.
Pray for Mike White's ribs, folks.
So
we all are.
There we go. But yeah, even though. What's positive is even though the Detroit Lions' run defense has been better recently, the fact of the matter is that Bam Knight's being involved in the passing game as well. It's not just all Michael Carter here. So, yeah, give me some Bam Knight. Bam Knight.
The next
Playing
one
with his toys.
A little more difficult, the Bucs backfield with Rachaad White, Leonard Fournette, taking on the Bengals, which that front seven alone is a problem for any kind of fantasy matchup. Barry, how do you rank these two? I mean, it's got to be nail-biting close.
Yeah, it really is. Hopefully Fournette's a little bit healthier this week, and this may flip-flop. At the moment, I have Fournette at 23. I have Rachaad White at 27. So fairly close. The positives on Fournette is that 3 of the last 4 games, he's gotten 7 targets. He's had back-to-back weeks with 6 receptions. I feel like he's the better choice to get a touchdown when they get in close. I know they like Rachaad White as well in the passing game, but given how bad that offensive line is of Tampa Bay, you could see a decent amount of dump-offs to both running backs here. They're both touchdown-dependent flexes this week, but if I have to pick one, it's Uncle Lenny, at least as of right now. As you see it there on your screen in terms of what they did last week, Lenny gets 10 touches, Rachaad White gets 18. Lenny more effective with his receiving game. Obviously, White was the better runner. So given the fact that the Bengals are so good against the run, they're a top 10 run defense over the last month, I do think it's weird because you would have thought at the beginning of the season, Fournette was the runner and Rachaad White was the passing down back. But it seems like those roles have switched recently. Maybe that had to do with Fournette's health. Again, they're both touchdown-dependent flexes for me.
Look, if you had these dudes ranked flip-flop, nobody would think anything different of it. If you had Rachaad White and Matthew, you had Leonard Fournette, I tell both of you, start them both because they both got a shot.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you're not starting either guy because it's a tough matchup.
That's what you hope,
You're hoping you're not starting either, but I do think both are, again, touchdown-dependent flexes. That's where I have them ranked this week.
Another tricky one, but a little bit more optimism, I think, in this offense with the Chiefs. Isaiah Pacheco, Jerick McKinnon. Pacheco's getting the carries. McKinnon's getting the receiving work here. Lawrence, both of these guys honestly start-worthy at this point because of their roles in the offense, defined roles.
Yeah, I would say Jerick McKinnon is a start definitely in PPR. I would go with Isaiah Pacheco, though, more versus the Houston Texans, who are 14-point dogs against the Chiefs, mainly because Pacheco's his role's been consistent. Ever since he's been that, RB1 for the Chiefs, he's been consistent, at least 15 touches and 80 scrimmage yards in 5 straight games. So now they got the Houston Texans on tap right here. They could get ahead early, although we always say that about the Texans, and then they almost end up beating the Dallas Cowboys or the Eagles or something. But this time, I'm good with Pacheco.
Yeah, Pacheco's going to make the love list this week. I mean, the fact of the matter is that no team in the NFL has given up more fantasy points to opposing running backs than the Houston Texans. No team in the NFL has given up more rushing touchdowns to opposing running backs than the Houston Texans. To your point about the usage there, Lawrence, absolutely right. He's getting at least 15 touches, since he took over, since CEH went on IR. McKinnon's more of a flex to me in PPR. He scored 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Little fluky. I mean, when you're on the field, like with Patrick Mahomes, stuff can happen, but the long touchdown with the flip pass, like an unbelievable play, but how repeatable is that? It is worth noting, he is getting targets in the passing game. It does seem like it's a little bit of a narrow, it's just those 2 guys in the backfield, and so he comes in at 26 for me. Again, I agree with Lawrence. He's a viable flex in PPR. But Pacheco is the guy you're definitely starting in this backfield.
Speaking of flex, looking at the Ravens, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, I would think both are trying to play their way into flex territory. How do you rank them this week, Barry? And can you honestly start either of them?
I do think you can start J.K. Dobbins. Now, again, no passing game usage. He looked like he ran out of gas on that long touchdown. He comes in running back 30 for me. Gus Edwards comes in at 38. if there's a positive here, it's the fact that Dobbins got through that week healthy, gets the touchdown. You see it there, 15 touches, 15 rushes, I should say, for 120 yards and a touchdown. You like the matchup with the Browns here. I mean, the Browns always play Baltimore really tough, but in general, they've given up the second most rushing touchdowns to opposing running backs. It could be Gus, it could be Dobbins that gets in the end zone. Based on the usage last week and just sort of the eye test, you prefer Dobbins to Edwards. But again, it's going to be a backfield committee with a backup quarterback under center.
Maybe even third string.
Yeah, even though Dobbins
and possibly third string. I mean, we'll see about
Humphrey. Dobbins don't look like he 100% on that long run he ran, but the Ravens are determined to get him going and get him in a rhythm. So I feel confident in starting Dobbins on the fact that they're going to give him the touches. Gus Edwards, not so much, but because it's a committee, you really don't know. That's why I won't say both, but definitely Dobbins.
But they're both flex plays. If Edwards was out for this game, you'd feel really good about Dobbins. But again,
Last one here, the Commanders, Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. Here's the thing to know. The Giants' run defense for about a month plus right now, teams have feasted on them. Does that make both of the – I mean, obviously Gibson's not getting the run game work, but are both of these guys start worthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, Robinson has – the positives here is that he's had back-to-back games with multiple receptions, so he's starting to get some passing game usage. He's had at least 20 touches and 85 yards from scrimmage in 3 of the past 4. To your point about the Giants, they're a bottom 3 run defense over the last month. 4 straight games now, the Giants have allowed at least 160 rushing yards, and that's what the Commanders want to do, similar to the Panthers, similar to a lot of these other teams, the Ravens. We're going to play good defense. We're going to run the hell out of the ball. We're going to limit what Taylor Heineke has to do in this one, and we're going to try to, scrape out a win. And so fully healthy off of the bye, they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this very important matchup against the Giants. I think Robinson is a very viable flex this week. He's going to make others receiving votes on my love list tomorrow. And Antonio Gibson also right there as well. A little bit more risky because he doesn't have the touchdown equity generally that Brian Robinson does. But I do think they want to go run heavy against the Giants and should be successful.
Yeah, all what you said. I'm going to just keep this simple right here. Give me both of them.
All right.
Both of them. Let's go.
Yeah, you got to love the matchup.
They win in the game, too.
Yeah,
they win in the game. They going to win the game.
I hope so. Gibson should be healthy, too. He was a little bit banged up there just before the bye, so hopefully he's healthier as well. So, hail to the Commanders. Hail victory.
One last break for us, but when we're back, you can win $100,000 by watching the Commanders-Giants game on Sunday night. We'll explain when we're back.
$100K? I can okay. Am I eligible?
I could use 100.
The NFL season is here, and the NBC Sports Predictor app is giving you a shot at winning $100,000 by entering Sunday Night 7's free contest between the Giants and the Commanders. So if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. All right, guys.
All right.
Speaking of that SN7, Lawrence, we're going to start with you. Saquon Barkley, total yards in this game. What range you going with?
It's wild that he's only averaged 50 over the past 4 games, but he's going to get right this game. They might not win the game, but give me 100 to 109 total yards for Saquon Barkley. Take me to the fantasy championship, baby.
Coach Brian Dable, while we were on, said that he's a full go for practice this week.
Sir.
Barry, you have Brian Robinson.
Yeah, I'm going to take over 100 yards. Look, he's had back-to-back games again with 20 touches and 95 or more rushing yards. Again, as I just said in last segment, the Giants have allowed 160 rushing yards in 4 straight games. Robinson gets the majority of the work in the run game here. Yeah, I'm going to take 100-plus yards on Brian Robinson.
I'm looking at Danny Dimes here, total yards. So the rushing matters a lot, although I think with the way the flow of this game, the Giants will be looking to throw as well. I'll go 240 to 259, which is actually in the higher range for Daniel Jones, but I do think he'll be tasked with throwing more.
Very quickly, just got an alert from the Fantasy Life app. John Glennon on Twitter, who covers the Titans, says Mike Vrabel, Treylon Burks still in the concussion protocol.
Okay.
So we'll wait to see what happens with Treylon Burks, but still in the concussion protocol.
All right, let's close out with a fun one here, guys, and a very serious one.
Okay.
Better bet to make the playoffs. The Washington Commanders, your Washington Commanders, are sitting at minus 190, or the team they see this week in the New York Giants, who are plus money, Lawrence. Plus money. Which one you like more?
What's BetMGM doing to me here with minus 190?
Listen, I don't want you to have to jinx your team, man.
Thank you, my
I'm
friend.
going Washington Commanders right here because they're going to win this game in Week 15, and then those odds is going to go crazy for the Commanders, so get it while the getting is good.
Barry, you have belief in your Commanders?
I've seen the end of this movie too many times. I'll tell you this, I'm probably not taking this bet is what I'm doing. Like, I don't love the Giants at plus money. I don't think they make the playoffs. I think they're starting to get exposed here. But minus 190, it's a lot of juice there. I'd rather just, as a fan, I think the Commanders get there, but I'd rather not have. I don't need to win money. I'll be happy enough as it is. I'll put my money elsewhere on BetMGM. But if you believe, promo code Barry over at BetMGM, listen, you get a risk-free first bet up to $1,000.
It's a lot of bread.
It's a lot of bread. Risk-free as well on your first bet. Listen,
Get
it is
her
closing
done.
time, which means you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Lawrence Jackson and Connor Rogers, I'm Matthew Barry. We will see you tomorrow for Love Hate Day. Thanks for tuning in. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Barry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.